So now that we have our project built, the Viking chair has been built and assembled, we can go to our next part in this series, and that's sanding. Now to do that, we're going to be using palm sanders, this sanding table, and some good old muscle. So sanding is generally pretty safe. I don't know of anybody that's got hurt sanding, but it's potentially possible. You're still in the shop, so you still have to be safe. You have to dress safe. So whether the thing that you're doing in the shop is safe or not, you also have to think about what other people are doing in the shop. So you have to make sure that you're wearing safety glasses at all times, just like before, rolling up your sleeves, tying back your hair, getting rid of that jewelry, and being shop safe. And now that we're shop safe, we can begin. So what we're going to aim to do is get off some of those burn marks. So you can see on there's some burn marks. We're trying to get off some of the imperfections that are on the faces of our boards. Maybe any pencil marks. I know this one I have quite a bit of pencil marks. There's a little bit more marking on it. So you can see there's some pencil marks. So that's got to all come off. And I actually have some snipe here I'm going to work at getting off. There's just some bumps here from the planer. All of that has to come off. So to do that, we're going to use palm sanders. I've taken out different palm sanders here to show you how to load sandpaper on it. That's probably maybe one of the more difficult things about sanding, but otherwise it's pretty straightforward. Before I forget, the other danger with sanding is dust. So we want to have the vents on when we're sanding, and we want this gate here to be open. And sometimes if nobody else is working over here, I'll shut these other gates off to make sure I have good suction from our sanding table. The sanding table has little holes in it, and these little holes, that's where the dust just goes in, and then it goes into our dust extraction system. So that's the third thing that we want to worry about is dust in our lungs. Now, when you're sanding, you obviously have to use sandpaper, load it onto the sanders. And just on this board right here, we have something called Know Your Grits. And an EA actually built that with one of my former students. And it shows you about the different grits of sandpaper, the different grades of sandpaper that you have. Now, when you're sanding, you want to sand in stages. So I've got a few samples of sandpaper out here for you. This is called a P80. Now this means that the sandpaper is pretty rough and pretty abrasive. This is what we're going to start with, a P80. Okay, and that's on this chart here. I don't think you can see it, but I'll maybe do a quick video of it for you. And from 80 grit we go to 120. So we sand everything with 80 grit, then everything with 120, and then we move on to 180 grit, and it's just getting smoother and smoother as we go. And then once we're done that, we jump up to, you can go to 220, but I'm going to jump right to 320, which I have on this little disc that I'm going to be putting in the orbital sander here. Okay, so when we're sanding, we want to spend the most time with that 80 grit. That's our first coarsest sandpaper, and get all the imperfections off. And once you jump past that, it's actually pretty quick. You're using the 120 grit to sand out the marks of the 80 grit, and then the 180 or 220 to sand out the 120 marks, and then you jump to the 320 to sand out the marks of the 180 or the 220 grit. And then we usually stop there, because once you're done that and you apply a nice clear coat over your stain, the clear coat really fills in any imperfections and makes it really nice and smooth. You can go higher than that. Even on this board we have here, we have a 400. So you can go higher than that, and some very fine finishes that we apply, we can use a 400. So what I'm going to do is just show you these sanders right now. So this is called a half sheet sander. Now the half sheet sander basically means that I use half a sheet of sandpaper. So I want to put my 80 grit on that one. So here's my 80 grit. Now the 80 grit is going to be cut in half. One here and one here. So that's what a half sheet sander is. If it is a third sheet sander, then I have one of these. So this takes a third of a sheet. So it goes 1, 2, 3. And then these are quarter sheet sanders, and those take a quarter. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you can mark them out with the sanders themselves. I have a Sharpie here, or we have created templates. I have created templates for a 1/3 sheet, which is this size, and 1/4 sheet. And I don't believe I have one for the half sheet. We just traced that one. Okay, so I'll just leave those out as well. Just gonna move this aside. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is put 80 grit on the half sheet sander, the 1/3 sheet sander as well. Then I'm gonna put 120 grit onto this sander, the 1/3, and then I'm going to put 180 or 220 on this one, whichever one it was. And then I'm going to put the 320 on the orbital for the final finish. So let's just show you how to put the sandpaper on first of all. We'll begin with the half sheet. They're all pretty much the same, and very similar ways to put them on. So if you notice too, these are stored with the cord wrapped around nicely. Now that's important, because there's a lot of sanders. There's also some more sanders here, and probably on the out in that brown tool chest. And if we don't wrap them, cords are all over the place. So store them, wrap them, make it nice, neat, and tidy so we have room. Speaking of room, we can sand mostly on this table, but if there's more people that are sanding in the shop, we can use other tables. We just don't have the dust extraction on the other tables in the room. That's really the only purpose for this. So this primarily is our sanding table, but sometimes we just have to use some other places in the shop to sand. Not a big deal. Just make sure the vents are on in the shop. The half sheet sander, so that's going to get the 80 grit. And this one here, I'm just going to put that on here like that. I'll do this over here so the other camera can see it. Just like so. And I will draw a line like that. I'm just going to put it on the other side to double check. Draw another line, see where we're at. Yeah, so I'm just going to cut in the middle of those two lines. Some people say don't use scissors to cut sandpaper because it dulls them, but I don't know if that's true, because we've been using the same scissors for all the time I've been here, and they've still cutting sandpaper. I've also heard, on the other hand, that cutting sandpaper sharpens scissors. You can look that up and leave your answer in the comments below, I guess, but not sure. I just use scissors. I don't like ripping them. Some people will actually take the sandpaper, they'll bend it, and they'll bend it back again, and maybe I'll show you that for one of the other ones. But then what happens is you just don't get a nice clean edge. The extra sandpaper you have, we just put back in the sandpaper drawers. Now, what I usually do here is I will put the cord down over the edge of the table, so just like that. Let me just spin that forward like so. There we go. And place this inside the jaws just by pulling back on this little handle. And then I'll flip that over, put it right on the table, and I'll pull that jaw back, open it up, and just push it in there. Now we want it to be as tight as we can in there, because the tighter it is, the less it vibrates and rattles around, so it's quieter. And it also lasts longer if it's not rattling around. So we want this to be nice and tight. And that worked out pretty good. And we want it to be so that the sandpaper covers the pad of the sander, because if it's not covering the pad, then you can wear out the pad. So that one's done and it's ready to use. That's the half sheet. So let's go to one of the third sheet sanders. Now the half sheet that's left over will not work for this. We need to save this piece for another day when we need another half sheet. We have to take a fresh piece of 80, and what we're going to do is mark that into 3. 1, 2, 3. You can use this, or you can use one of these templates that I created, which is just a little bit more handier. So we just place that on there and mark it 1, and then I'm going to mark from the other side, and just check in the middle to make sure we're good. We're pretty close. So now I'm going to cut those out again with scissors. You can fold this again, but the third sheets are very difficult to fold. Now, I usually will just cut both of them, even if I only need one. And then that way I have an extra couple pieces in the drawer for the, see that there? For the next time I need it. Now this one has jaws as well, but they release a little bit differently. They're not really in a clamping motion like this. They've got kind of a lever style to them. So those pop open. This has a dust bag on it, so I'm going to take that off for now, just so you can see it a little better. It's always easier to unwrap the cord. And I always put the cord down first over the edge, like so. Place that in there just like before, and then this snaps into place and just goes underneath this little lip here. Turn it around, pull it over, and this is where you can see if you're going straight or crooked. If it's crooked, see when I pull that straight, it's crooked, I can put this in and then straighten it out on the other side, or I can straighten it and then put it in. The other thing I have a bit of an issue with these sanders is this sandpaper is actually a little too long. So if I put this in here like that, I get a very loose piece of sandpaper, which is not good at all. So what I'll do is I'm going to leave this side in there because I know this side was crooked. Take this side back out, take my scissors and just cut a couple millimeters off of that. You always want to cut a little bit off and try it. And if you have to cut more off, you can, but you can't add, so don't cut too much off. So a couple mils again, and I put that in there, and I really just pull that back with my fingers and put that in. Nice and tight. That's good to go. 2 80 grits are done, one on a half sheet sander, one on a third sheet sander. Now let's do the same with this sander. Now this is a third sheet sander, but it just has, it's a little bit older than that one, and it has a little different clamping system on it. It has something that just goes back like this, a little jaw. So that was going to be 120. No, we did 120. That's going to be, oh no, we've got 80, 80, yes, 120. There we go. So we'll put that 1/3 sheet template on there again. Actually, why don't I show you it without the template? Because I did show you that already with the template. Nice thing about the template is it goes all the way from top to bottom, whereas this doesn't. So I just go like that, and then I double check. We're good to go. That's one. Now, again, the cord over the edge. Place that sandpaper in that jaw, try to make it nice and straight, release the jaw, turn that around, upside down, and pull that straight. If it's straight, good. If not, you're going to have to straighten it out. Check to see if it's too long by putting it in there. Again, a little tiny bit too long. Not a big deal. This time I'm going to take off about 4 millimeters. See if that works. Great. Nice and tight. My 120 is good to go. Now the quarter sheet I'm going to put on this 180. Now the quarter sheet means I can get 4 pieces out of one sheet. And that sanding, oh, I did take it out. It says Hitachi here, but that was an old sander. This is a Makita. It'll be the same. Now you have to make sure you put the template the right way. It can't be this way. It has to be turned this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So I'll mark that out. Again, you can use the machine to mark it out as well. There we go. Oh, I was going to show you how to rip this. So I'll show you how to do it on this one. If you don't have scissors, if you're out in the forest somewhere and have no scissors, but you have power and sand. So you have that mark on there. You can fold it. First of all, usually fold it inwards with the grit on the inside. Make sure everything matches up. And actually, on fine sandpaper with this red backing, it actually will rip quite nicely. And then you turn it, fold it the other way, and well, I crimped it, if you didn't see that. Sometimes people fold it back and they'll put it over the edge of the table and they'll do this. Really get that crease nice and tight, and then you just take that and rip it. Very nice. There we go. We have half sheet, 1/3 sheets, and some quarter sheets. Sometimes if students have nothing better to do, they can cut sandpaper into pieces so that you don't have to do this every time you use it. So this is even a different clamping system. It has a system where it has this little lever on the side that goes up and down, and then you just press it around this little hook right in here. So you put it down, on both sides or down, and again, just going to put that over the side. Place that in the jaws. Pull that over and down, and same with this one, push it in. That one probably doesn't need trimming. Okay, there we go. Nice and tight, covers the pad, and we're good to go on that. The orbital sander is extremely simple. The sandpaper is more expensive though, so generally you don't use it as much. The orbital sander has sandpaper that just sticks on, but you want to make sure that the pad is clean before you do that. So I'm just going to grab some compressed air and pointing away from me, I'm just going to blow that off. Put that there for now in the sake of time. And then when you put this on, you want to make sure that I hold it like this so that I make sure that I get it right in the first shot. You can take this on and off, but the more you do it, the more that it doesn't stick as good. And these, like even that, doesn't stick that good. These aren't my favorite. Mr. Solowski likes these. If you have good, new, fresh, new pads, they work. But it'll work fine for that last sanding of the 320 grit. And that is an orbital sander. Alrighty, we are set up and ready to sand. I'm just going to put these bags back on for saving our lungs. Do some housekeeping, put some things away. We also have hand sanders here. That won't be part of this video. A lot of the concepts apply. They all, you start coarse and you work towards fine sandpaper. And these just have a little screw in here. They take a quarter sheet sandpaper, I think. I believe that's what they are. They take a quarter sheet and they wrap around. Now this one obviously they need to be changed. That one's not bad. You just take your screw up and pull the handle off, and then put that sandpaper in, and you're flying. So let's get those boards back here and start doing some sanding. Okay, let's start by sanding our backrest. Sanding takes time. You can't rush through sanding. You want to make sure that you get all your imperfections out, or then it kind of spoils your project. So we're going to start with this 80 grit half sheet sander. Sanding can also be very noisy, so if you want to put in some earplugs, you can do that, and we're good to go. Just a quick tip: when you're sanding, we try to sand with the grain. So our grain direction is running this way, okay? And because it's running this way, we want to make sure that we're sanding with the grain. With palm sanders, it's not too bad if you're sanding against the grain, because the palm sanders actually work in an orbital fashion similar to this, kind of a circular fashion, so it doesn't scratch it as bad as if you took hand sanding like this and you were to go across the grain rather than with the grain. Or if you took your belt sander, and I didn't show you a belt sander, but we do have belt sanders over there, they're running in one direction, and because they're running in that one direction, if you're going across grain, they'll scratch it quite a bit. But palm sander is a little bit more forgiving, but still we like to go with the grain. Okay, I like to work with the board close to me, and that way I just have more control. And then you just sand away. You just put it on here, make sure you have no hair going into here. That's really the only thing that can get caught up in there that I know of. And you sand. Power's not on. Plugged in. Gotta turn that on. Try that again. Let's go. Definitely not done sanding with the 80 grit, but I just wanted to show you the general action of it. I have to sand quite a bit more, especially because I have snipe from the thickness planer. Snipe is just when it comes out of the thickness planer, it just kind of makes these gouges in it. I like to do big surfaces with a bigger sander, and the edges, like this, and the ends can be done with this smaller sander. So like this 1/3 grit. Or 1/3 sander with 80 grit. Now there's plugins all over the place here, so find one that works for you. Now you can hold on to this like this and sand. It can be over the table as well. Okay, you just got to be careful that it's not on something like a piece of metal that can damage it. So I always take a look at the area that I'm working on and make sure there's nothing that can damage the surface or the project that I'm working on. But for something like this, the edge, what I actually like to do is still come on this side of the table because I'm right-handed. What I actually like to do, can you see that in there? Not really, hey? Let me just lower that camera. There, what I like to do is this. Ooh, that one's dusty. So I'll go like that, and I'll just run it along the edge. And as I'm going, make sure my cord's good, as I'm going, I'll just turn the sander a little bit like this. So just like this. Every time I push the sander, I just move it a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And then I do the same on this side. This edge. And of course the ends. And then on the corners I just kind of round go like this. Sometimes just hand sanding the corners works pretty good too. Okay, so that's how we would sand basically all of the grits. So I would take and sand with my 80 grit everything. Then I would go with my 120 grit and do the exact same thing. The 80 grit is going to take the most time because I'm getting all those imperfections out. The only thing the 120, the 180 or 220, the 320, they're just taking the scratches from the previous grit that you had. Okay, kind of like I said before. That's all it is. You just sand and sand and sand and sand, and some people put earphones in. This is probably the only time I let you listen to music, but I'm not really big on that either because then you can't hear what's going on around you. So if there's danger, you can't hear. So maybe in your own shop, but that's what we do. So I'm just gonna sand. You don't need to watch me sand. It's gonna take way too long. So I'm gonna do a whole bunch of sanding and I'll kind of show you the finished product when I'm done. Okay, so I am done now with the 80 grit sandpaper, and I just wanted to show you a little close up here what that looks like. So when you take a look at that board, you don't really see any burn marks, you don't see any scratches, you don't see any chip out, basically any imperfections. It's all gone. That's what that did. And one more thing I said I would do is show you how to soften an edge. So I can just take some scrap paper here, and if you take a look at this edge, I chose to leave this flat. I didn't router that in the routering lesson. And if you take a piece of sandpaper, you can just hand sand this just a little bit to soften that up so it's not so sharp. You can sand a little bit in here while you're at it too. Okay, and just soften those up so we don't cut anybody when we're putting it together. Okay? So now that I have the 80 grit done, I can do a sanding with the 120. Same procedure. It's going to take way less time. Much less time. 120, 180, 320, done. And then we can blow it off, clean it off, and then it's ready for a finish to apply a stain and a clear coat. Now I don't think you can tell the difference between the 120 and the 80 grit. So just from looking at it, it's actually more of a feel. You might see when I'm done. Here, I'll compare it. There's the 80, and I'll show you when I'm totally finished with the 320, and we'll see if you can notice a difference. Okay. Okay, so here's a side-to-side comparison. This one and this one. There we go. One has been sanded to 80 grit. One has been sanded to 320 grit. Can you tell which one? Take a closer look. If you guess that this one is 80 and this is 320, you are correct. This is already done. I just finished it, 320. I'm now going to move on to the backrest. This one here is good to start finishing, applying a finish. Beautiful, nice and smooth. You can even hear it. You can smell it. You can see it. Super smooth. Looks pretty nice. So my last 320 grit is done with that orbital sander, and lost my dust bag here. And it works in kind of an orbital fashion, so when you turn it on, it spins, and when you press it down, it actually stops spinning and kind of vibrates. This is used quite a bit in the final process, used in the with the 320 grit. That's what I use it mostly for. And if you're an auto body person, you'll use an orbital sander more than any other sander, as far as I know. So it's it acts in the same way. And it sounds sounds the same as a regular sander. So that's it. The back has been done. The seat has been done. Has been sanded. Other than applying a finish, this project has been completed. I hope you enjoyed the 11-part series of building a Viking chair. Maybe sometime in the future I can squeeze in a part 12 where I apply a finish, but for now we'll call this project complete. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your summer.